It's an Ask LOJ edition of Locked On Jazz, and you hit the number one question everybody wants the answer to. How big a deal is the supposed bad team mood, and what does it do to Lauri Markkanen's future in Salt Lake City? It's all next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Today on Locked On Jazz, you have asked all the important questions that everybody wants, and we're going to head to them on the show today. How is the mood supposedly impacting the Utah Jazz? Would it have been valuable to make the playoffs? Who are comps for Taylor and Keyonte after watching them so far, with some specific questions? Some rotations questions. We'll get into some points gained as well, and why the Jazz defense is not better. If we get to all of them, you guys were awesome today. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's a daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available on every podcasting app as well as on YouTube. Please subscribe, follow. If you're on YouTube, hit that little bell button and also subscribe so you get notified every time we do a show. And to the everydayers out there, thank you for those who stopped by. These are the Locked On Jazz stickers, and people stopped by last night, picked up a bunch of them, and I really appreciate that. I will try to have them in my pocket during the games whenever I'm around. So that'll be I can't promise all the time, but I'll grab a bunch of them every day, put them in my pocket, and try to have them for you. So come by. Somebody brought their kids. Somebody put stickers on a piece of paper. It was cool. Appreciate you on that. All right, let's get right to it. You guys are super. I love Ask LOJ days because you guys are so good. So here's the first one. The first three or four all kind of fall into the same category. We'll fly through them. How valuable would it have been for this Jazz team to have playoff experience? So I think there's two things to this that I would say. One is, again, I do think a little bit of recalibration of reality. Like, what is the playoff experience you think we were going to have? We were sitting at 10th in the Western Conference, and the Warriors have won 8 of 10. The Lakers have won 7 of 10. Sacramento and Dallas were considerably further ahead of us. So the first thing is we were going to have to hold off the Warriors to have playoff experience. Like, that's the first part of this. That was not guaranteed at all. Their point differential is much better than ours. They have a very heavy road schedule the rest of the way, though. And we're now down 2.5 and having lost 4 in a row, so it feels unlikely. But so that's the first question. It's like, what really are we talking about with playoff experience? Second of all, what we're really talking about is we would have played a single, in all likelihood, according to Vegas odds, we would have played a single, if we'd held off the Warriors, we would have played a single play-in game and lost to the Lakers in LA. That's what Vegas would have said, right? So, yeah, it would be valuable to get a single game of playoff experience, but that's not really playoff experience. That's a play-in game, which would have been super cool to call, and I would have loved it. Like, I'd love to call a play-in game. I hope we do that someday because I think it's just the coolest thing. So I just think you have to recalibrate that a tiny bit. I'm like, what is it? So, yes. So I go back a little bit to what Will Hardy has said, is that we've got to play important games, and we've got to not let the world become numb to losing. And that's why I think the way they played the second half yesterday against the Warriors is so important. What a game. That was insanity. Because they played hard. They stayed engaged. They didn't roll over. They were down by a bunch, and it felt like you were playing out the string, and then all of a sudden they made the run, and they may have found a little soul and texture as a group, which would be great because, it would have been because then you're going to keep playing. And by the way, we opened the second half of the season with I think 6 games, 4 of which are super winnable. We suddenly go win those games and we go 4-2 to start the second half, and we're 30-32. We're kind of back in it playing important games. So I think that's the important thing. Don't let losing become numb and play important games. In your opinion, does the Jazz losing a lot affect Lauri wanting to re-sign with the team? I think the team loves Lauri. I think Will and Lauri have a very special relationship that they're building. And I think Lauri really likes Utah. Would Lauri like the team to be better? Would it be easier to resign? Sure. Does Lauri probably in the back of his mind totally understand what's going on? And much as he and Simone had built a relationship and gotten close. And so that was super painful, like that you lost a buddy. Sure. Do we need to keep buddies so we win championships together? Probably not. That's not the game. So again, I'm kind of did the first question on purpose. In your opinion, does the Jazz losing a lot affect Lauri wanting to resign with the team? So sure, it can have an impact. Would have the Jazz finishing 10th or 11th, either missing out on the play into the Warriors, which I think was the most likely scenario had there been no trades, or making the 10th spot and losing the Lakers, which would have been the next most likely scenario, in a single playing game, help Lauri wanting to re-sign that much? Would have that made is that dramatically different? There's definitely some heartfelt about guys being traded. These guys have also been around for a long time and guys getting traded. Sarah noted the team felt, Sarah Todd, Deseret News, does great work, noted the team felt like the rug had been pulled out from under them. Do you have the same vibe? Does the front office need to do anything to help the players feel supported? So I think this was more of a really interesting circumstance with the team where, as I talked about earlier in the year, I thought they had no connectivity. Like when I went to practice and I looked at the group, I literally thought they had zero connectivity. Like I would look and be like, well, who does Ochai hang out with? Who does Lauri hang out with? And I remember we were in Indianapolis and it was the first time I'd seen two of our players out for dinner together. Now I don't go to the same restaurants I always go to, but on that night I saw two players and an agent out for dinner together. And I was like, noticeable to me that was the first time I'd seen that. And what I think, to the credit of the organization and Will Hardy and staff, they worked incredibly hard at this. The Hawaii trip was supposed to do it a little bit, and a team of introverts, it actually didn't do it. They didn't like go away from each other, but there wasn't some massive bonding that took place. So there was a lot of in-season work here. And Will has done it with Show Love, which is kind of his culture thing for the year, which is them showing love to each other. And then a lot of team dinners. They were in Philadelphia. They had a team dinner and other places along the way, and great turnout for those team dinners. And so I do think you'd had this group that had suddenly very slowly kind of bonded together and come together with all this work. And then that's where they got the rug pulled out from under them, is that they had just begun to start these relationships. Simone and Lauri had just started this relationship, whoever it was. That's an example. And then they got the rug pulled out. And what they got the rug pulled out of is this time and effort and opening up and sharing their soul to each other and becoming bonded. And now three of those guys, Kelly being one of the coolest dudes on the planet, got traded. And so I think it was about liking each other and bonding together as a group. And that's hard. That's human. That sucks. I don't know that it's anything that the front office needs to do to help players. I mean, it was very clear, like when Danny was running Boston, that like he was willing to trade anyone at any moment, and he did. Like Isaiah Thomas was the most beloved player, and he traded him for Kyrie Irving. And Danny jokes with the players all the time, like says, like walking through the locker room, what are you out there doing? I'm looking for players better than you. Like that's like a little bit of the kind of the known thing. So I don't think anyone thinks it's that unusual. Now, do I think the players kind of go into the detail of really caring that Kelly's a free agent or that Detroit had $70 million of cap space and so they're asking for Fontecchio? Like, no, I don't think the players dig in on that level and look at it in that fashion. And so I do think they're probably hurt, but they're hurt in relationship ways. I don't think they feel deceived. I don't buy that. And I think it's a tribute actually to what it was built. Because I'll tell you that those relationships that were painful to say goodbye to did not exist in October and November. So in that sense, I think you have to give some real credit, impressive credit to the Jazz, to Will Hardy and the crew. And that's what makes that painful. All right, we're just getting started. If we did a redraft of 2023, what are good comps for Taylor? That's a really great question. I'm not sure I have a good answer. What's a good comp for Keyonte now? That's where we'll go next. When do the Jazz pursue a top 10 player? Why aren't certain guys playing? And points gained. All coming up as we continue here on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. This is one of my favorite things we do. It is time for the eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. Dun, 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 dun. We combined the eBay Motors along with the best #1 fantasy show in the country, that of Josh Lloyd, to help you win your fantasy league. So here's who Josh Lloyd thinks your eBay guaranteed fit fantasy picks of the week are. Marvin Bagley III is Washington's likely starting center after the Daniel Gafford trade and worth grabbing for fantasy leagues. Asur Thompson of the Pistons, the overhaul of their roster, can only hope that Monty Williams will bump Asur back into a larger role. Cody Martin, health permitting, could find himself in a strong role for Charlotte with Gordon Hayward now in Oklahoma City. And Benedict Mathurin, Buddy Hield now in Philadelphia. So it should be more minutes for Benedict Mathurin. Josh Lloyd is Locked On Fantasy Basketball's host and the #1 fantasy basketball show in the country. And he, along with eBay Motors, knows what a championship team is all about. And that's the perfect fit. So those guys are your new perfect fits for your team. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts on your #1 ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs. It's eBay Motors has it. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Motors, guaranteed fit, available to U.S. customers. Eligible items and exclusions do apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Hope you enjoy All-Star break. Leaf to Lean will be doing the shows Tuesday and Wednesday this week. And bringing you a little extra content. Tuesday and Wednesday. He's also a draft expert, so feel free to reach out to him and get his thoughts on it. He's a college basketball guru. All right, let's continue. Great Ask LOJs, and we do have points gained coming today. What are good comps for Taylor? He's a really raw player that developed their skills and became an all-star, all-NBA, or high-level starter. It's a great question and something I've got to dig into. So I think the comp that's jumping out to me the most recently is Jonathan Kuminga. Now, I don't know whether he's going to become an all-star, all-NBA, or high-level starter. And my instinct, honestly, is someone as raw as Taylor becoming an all-star or all-NBA seems like a real jump to me. Lauri probably could be somewhat of this comp, frankly, or scenario where this happens. But I find that standard is really high, right? That's one of the 15 best players in the NBA to be an all-star, your top 25 player in the NBA, 20 player in the NBA. I mean, Lauri's unbelievable this year and didn't make the all-star team, nor did Domantas Sabonis. So I think those two are really, really unlikely. I'm just going to be clear. I don't think that Taylor Hendricks is going to be an all-star and all-NBA player. I just think that standard's way too high. Can he be a long-term rotation starter? I think is the question. Kuminga was the 7th pick of the draft for the Warriors, and he's 6'8", 210. His body's a little different, but he really didn't know how to play when he came to, and he came straight out of high school. I think that's an interesting kind of comp to watch. It's been 2.5 years it's taken him before he's been really good. I don't think, Evan Mobley's got a lot of time and seems to understand the game better and has probably a higher upside to things. But I also think Evan Mobley's taken a long time. I'm kind of waiting on Evan Mobley still, I feel like. He's in his 3rd year this year, and he's kind of just been doing the same thing every year at 15 points, 8 rebounds, 9. And I think the subtle things are where he's growing. Mobley's upside is probably bigger than that of what we're seeing out of Taylor. Another interesting one to look at would be Jalen Johnson of Atlanta, who Jalen Johnson in his first year played 22 games in 5 minutes a game. And in his second year played 70 games and started 6. And now all of a sudden in his 3rd year is playing 34 minutes a night. I think that's actually as good a comp as I can come up with. He's the same size, same body, same athleticism, but he plays really hard. Taylor's going to have to play really hard. That's a skill Taylor needs to learn. But this is, Jalen Johnson played 13 games at Duke, was incredibly raw. And now is, a decent 3-point shooter at 35% this year. He's shooting 52% overall. He's averaging 16 points and 9 rebounds and 3 assists. That'd be great. I think Jalen Johnson might be the model of exactly what we're looking at. He was the 20th pick of Atlanta, and he was untouchable in the draft. So those would be some quick comps. Playing on the same concept, I got asked we redid the 2023 NBA draft, where would Taylor Hendricks and Keyonte George be drafted? So this was fascinating. I loved this question because I dug in on this one a little bit. So first thing is Bobby Marks and Kevin Pelton at ESPN did a thing the other day where they ranked their top 10 rookies. Now, this isn't necessarily where you'd redraft them, but this was the power rankings of your top 10 rookies. And so Marks had Victor and Pelton had Chet on the top, and those are clearly 1, 2. And then it gets really interesting. Then like Pelton's taking Derek Lively, and then Podziemski, and then Jaime Jaquez, and then Brandon Miller, and then Cason Wallace, and then Asur Thompson, and then Cam Whitmore, and then and then Amon Thompson. And Pelton actually never takes Keyonte George. Marks takes Keyonte George 10th. So the first thing that was interesting to me is like the guy who really falls out of the top. If you're going to start shooting Keyonte up, the guy that falls out of the top is Scoot Henderson. And then I think you have to ask yourself, like on Anthony Black's shooting and the Thompson twins shooting, whether you move someone ahead. And then Jett Howard at 11th has been kind of disappointing. Grady Dick at 13 has been somewhat disappointing. And Kobe Buffkin at 15. So I think you would vault Keyonte ahead of Kobe Buffkin, who's played 25 minutes, ahead of Jordan Hawkins a little bit, despite the fact he's shooting 38% from three, ahead of Grady Dick, and ahead of Jett Howard. So then you probably have Keyonte up to 11. But from there, I don't know that you actually are jetting Keyonte up much more, despite 33 points and being totally awesome last night. Because almost every single one of these guys was, based on projections. Like if I told you right now, you could trade Keyonte George for Scoot Henderson, would you do it? It's interesting. Scoot shooting 38% and 31% from three, so that's really ugly, came in with all sorts of accolades. If I told you could trade Keyonte for either of the Thompson twins, would you do it? I would take Keyonte above Anthony Black. Despite Anthony Black's size, I was just really worried about his shooting. His shooting's actually been pretty good at 37%, but it feels that that's going to be an issue. So I think that's really interesting. Taylor Hendricks is also interesting on the draft because no one thought Taylor Hendricks was going to be ready to impact this year. And Taylor Hendricks got drafted at the 9th pick because he's 6'9", 210 pounds. And that just does something really special by the time you're done. And Jerice Walker got picked before him at 6'8", 240. I would put Taylor Hendricks ahead of Jerice Walker just because Jerice Walker hasn't stepped right in and done stuff right now, and nor has Taylor. And I like Taylor's body better. So now all of a sudden I got Taylor moving up. Now, there's probably some guys behind Taylor and Jaime Jaquez and Braden Podziemski, and the same thing in Keyonte, who probably should vault Keyonte at this point. But would you actually trade Keyonte George for Braden Podziemski, or do you still think Keontae's upside is better? You probably think it's better. Jaime Jaquez is really good. Would you, same question. So, like on the redraft, I actually don't think the redraft would be that different. In fact, I think you might still take Taylor Hendricks ahead of Keyonte George for all you know, because the body is just that unique and that special. Now that you have a longer look at Keyonte, who's a good player comp? So NBA point guards are awesome. There's a lot of them. Andy Larson wrote in his newsletter last night that he thought George Hill was a comp. Same size. I agreed with Andy. I don't agree on juice. I didn't think George Hill had a lot of juice, but it's an interesting 6'4" guard. I think Keontae's got a little bit more of an off the bounce dribble, 3-point shooting game than George Hill ever had, though somewhat might be tarnished by just George Hill at the end of his career, where he was, he just slowed down so much, and that's kind of my last memory of him. So I'd probably have to go back and think about like who I'm talking about. So it's again another good question. I think Anthony Simons is an interesting comp for Keyonte. Good off the bounce 3-point shooter, gets about 5 off a game. I think Keontae's probably going to be doing that kind of thing. He's not a point guard, but Tyler Hero's a little interesting to me in the Keyonte mix of things. Again, another good off the bounce shooter, 6'5", 195, averages 21 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, like pretty offensive minded. I think that of players today, I think that's a fairly interesting. The one I think the Leaf Tulane used a lot and was his dream case is Jamal Murray, who at 6'4", 215, now 26 years old, definitely advanced, but a little possible. Like that would be an upside. CJ McCollum is smaller, but I feel like their games are similar, though CJ McCollum's a better shot maker, but some of their games are similar. They both aren't going to get to the rim. CJ's 6'3", 190, so he's not that much smaller. So I think he's in that mix of comping out to be like the guards that rank between 6 and 12 in the NBA in a given season. I think that's kind of where I see him comping out if he keeps. But honestly, the thing on Keyonte, he's got to play hard. Both Taylor and Keyonte have to learn how to play hard. It's hard because you've been so good and so gifted your whole life, you don't need to. Now you have to. And Keyonte played harder last night than he ever has played in any game when he was playing against Steph. Dwayne Casey used to have a great line, players tell on themselves. Keyonte told on himself last night. He told how hard he can play. And so that's going to be really the question on where it's, because if he doesn't, then he's none of these great players. Then he's just an NBA. Then he's just a guy. And so I think that'll be really, really one of the most interesting things. Is next season too soon for the Jazz to pursue a top 10 player in the trade? So I would say, I think the Jazz are pursuing top 10 players right now. Like if one became available, the Jazz would go get it. There's no timetable here where the Jazz are saying they're not going to do it. The one thing we got to be really clear on this, like a top 10 player is Nikola Jokic. He's not being traded. Giannis is not being traded. Luka's not being traded. Joel Embiid's not being traded. Steph's not being traded. Shea's not being traded. Kawhi's not being traded. Jason Tatum's not being traded. Kevin Durant's not being traded. And Devin Booker's not being traded. So this is the difficulty in trying to go get a top 10 player. Because Anthony Davis is not getting traded. LeBron evidently is not getting traded. Tyrese Halliburton got traded. Won't be again. Donovan Mitchell will likely move. Ironically enough, we had him. He's 14th. Jalen Brunson did move. Jimmy Butler has moved. Anthony Edwards probably won't, but could ask for it. De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento hasn't moved, probably won't, could ask for it. Like suddenly you're into the realm of players that could suddenly start to. Jamal Murray's 19, Dame Lillard's 20, has moved. Paul George is 21, he has moved. Bam Adebayo's in this list, he is not. Sabonis moved at some point. Trae Young will move, he's 24th or 25th best player in the league. James Harden's moved. See what happens with Jaylen Brown and Karl Anthony Towns. Lauri Markkanen's at 29, has moved. So the top 10 players in the league don't move. But after that, they do, so you got to go find the guy who's there. All right, we'll continue. I have some other questions. We also have points gained. I have some great questions. I'll try to do a rapid fire, but I thought this was a really interesting question. Does points gained explain the impact the trades have had on the Utah Jazz? And my answer to that is yes. And we'll talk about it when we come back next on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdoch Hyundai lineup of cars, just incredible. The Kona is the small little zippy SUV. The Palisade is the gorgeous setup. We're at the Genesis this week in golf, which is the souped up version of the Hyundai. So check out when you see all the ads this week. If you're watching golf, the Hyundai has the same version, just cheaper for you. Absolutely fabulous lineup of cars. The Sonata and the Elantra, the sedans, and the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6 have won all the awards recently. They just keep piling. It's almost like cheating how many awards they're winning. And some of the deals right now are great. This, I believe it's the Sonata is on for $276 a month, 0% for 3 years on both the Santa Fe and the Tucson. I'm driving the Tucson right now. It's just absolutely fabulous. And I mentioned the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6 just keep stealing every single award imaginable that's out there for you in the electric car field. I have the 5, and it's just terrific. That's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. I'd like you to email me first if you're heading over there at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, so we can set you up with a VIP meeting that you deserve for being a Locked On listener. Today's show is also brought to you by Robinhood Retirement. Robinhood.com/boost. This is pretty interesting. Did you know that even if you have a 401k retirement, you still have an IRA? And Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer into your other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap. 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most on your retirement thanks to the IRA with a 3% match. Robinhood.com/boost. That's the boost right there. The offer is good through April 30th, so get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now let me give you some legal info because claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk and includes loss limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year. From the date of the first match, must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on all transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, let's do a little points gained. Do the Jazz losing? And I have done this before, and I don't know if it's worked, where I've shared the screen. Does the Jazz trades make impact on the trades make sense? So let me zoom the points gained program for you, and let's share it. For those of you on YouTube, I don't even know if this is worth it, but we'll try it. Okay. All right. So let's look at 2023-24 and the top players in the NBA so far. And the number one points game player in the NBA is Joel Embiid. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a guard has moved to number 2, which is pretty interesting when you start talking about his MVP candidate. Giannis Antetokounmpo is number 3, Kevin Durant 4, Nikola Jokic 5, Steph Curry 6, Kristaps Porzingis 7. What a pickup. The 2 guys that were robbed of the All-Star game, Domantas Sabonis 8, Lauri Markkanen 9, Jalen Smith in Indiana 10, hasn't played a ton, I don't think. He's been battling some injuries. He's at 38 games. Jared Allen, Cleveland 11, Luka 12, Kawhi Leonard 13, Grayson Allen having a great year 14 in Phoenix, Karl Anthony Towns 15, Daniel Gafford, who got traded, is 16. He's actually at Dallas, not at Oklahoma City. That's a great pickup by them. Nick Richards and then Derek Lively. So they'll have both those guys together. Rudy Gobert's there as well. That's, like you want an eye test of a number. That's pretty good eye test. Joel Embiid, Shai, Giannis, Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic is your top 5. Steph, Kristaps, Sabonis, Markkanen, Smith. Tells you how valuable Lowry is and how great he's been. Let's go look at the least efficient offensive players in the NBA. And they have to actually play. Scoot Henderson is the least efficient player in the league at a minus 2.6. Jordan Poole, a minus 2.2. Monty Morris, who Minnesota grabbed and everybody's so excited for, minus 2.1. Xavier Tillman, who's now on Boston, and everybody got so excited for, is a minus 1.9. Jordan Clarkson, minus 1.9 as well for the Jazz there. So Jordan, one of the 7 least efficient offensive players in the league this year. Tariq Whitehead, who's been oft injured. Jalen Green in Houston, that's becoming a little problematic for them. Nikola Vucevic in Chicago. Cade Cunningham in his 3rd year, with one being injuries there. That's getting a little problematic. And Shaedon Sharpe as well on the bottom there. Usually you see the young players, so it doesn't worry. Kyle Kuzma to minus 1.6, which is, interesting why there was trade demand for him. And then Taylor Horton-Tucker in there as well with Karis LeVert, who's always there. All right, so let's discuss the trade for a second. And let's look at a few things. I think we'll pull Detroit and Toronto, because I think that's where Kelly will be. My program I pull from to get the raw numbers does not always have guys in the right place. So let's hope we get our players. But here's Kelly Olynyk. He was a 1.1 points gained. And Simone Fontecchio was a 0.1. And then Ochai was struggling. Ochai Agbaji was a minus 0.7. So the Jazz traded 1.2 minus 0.7, 0.5 positive in their trade. 0.5 positive in their trade. They have the new players that are playing are Taylor Hendricks, who is a minus 0.9. And Taylor Horton-Tucker, who's getting time, is a minus 1.5. He's probably a little less because he's not playing as much. So let's call him a minus 1. So the Jazz went in the trades. The Jazz went on points gained from a positive 0.5 to a negative 2. That is a 2.5 difference. A point is usually 3.7 wins. Seems high. It used to be, I think, call it 3 wins. So we're at about a 7-win difference with the trades. that's too high. It's actually seems extreme to make it be that big a difference just with those players, but that's kind of what points gained would tell you. That the value, that points gained really lives on the negative offensive players far more detrimental than anyone realizes. The other thing we've done is we've increased Keyonte's minutes, who's a -1 in that a little bit. So here's the Jazz. Lauri Markkanen's a 2.3. Walker Kessler's a 1.0. Colin Sexton's a 0.8. That's great for a guard. Those are encouraging. John Collins' offense, always good, 0.5. Chris Dunn's a -0.3. And then Taylor's a -0.9. Keyonte's a -1, which is fine for a rookie guard. It's actually he's getting encouraging there. He's doing some nice things. Taking 42% of his shots as 3. Going to the free throw line 10% is a lot for a rookie. There's some real positive signs with Keyonte. Taylor's a -1.5 and Jordan Clarkson's a -1.9. Jordan's really had a tough year. And, frankly, when the year started and we all started having conversations about who's a top 100 player and who's a top on this roster, I think that most of us would have said the top 100 second best player is Jordan, and that has not been the case. Here are the hottest players in the top 10 in the last 10 games in the NBA. Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Donovan Mitchell, Anoka Okongwu, Domantas Sabonis, Gary Payton limited time, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gobert, Kevin Durant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lauri Markkanen, even with his struggles the last 2 games. I don't know if last night's in here. Kyrie Irving, Jalen Smith, Rui Hashimura. Boy, do we ever know that. Denny Advada, who I kind of like, by the way. Kristaps Porzingis. And the coldest players in the NBA over the last 10 games. I have not looked at this. Joel Embiid had hardly played. And a little bit as I have to go check and see who's actually played and not been injured. It's always hard to tell. So Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson, who got benched last night and then went off. That does not have last night in it. Terry Rozier traded to Miami, one of the least efficient. PJ Washington traded, one of the least efficient. Super interesting. David Roddy traded, one of the least efficient. That's interesting. Like, here's all these players that are being traded, and they're really struggling. De'Aaron Fox in Sacramento, one of the least efficient players in the last 10 games. Monty Morris just traded. DeJounte Murray, talked about a lot. Jordan Clarkson. Cade Cunningham. Jabari Smith, which is surprising. He's been very efficient all year until just now. Jaime Jaquez slowing down a great deal in Miami. Rookie Julian Strawther's only played 2 games recently. Dennis Schroeder, not super surprising. He's kind of always been there. Taylor floating in. And Jeremy Sohan. Taylor this has only got 3 games, is a -2.2. So if you want to go take that like little analysis I did a moment ago even further, you're trading Kelly Olynyk's positive 1.1 for Taylor Hendricks -2.2. It's like, yeah, that's going to be a massive impact on your wins and your losses in a season. All right, that is your points gained. That is your show. I did not get to all your questions. They're super good. Maybe I'll bang one out, an extra show out Monday, getting the rest of them. I loved the question, are the Wolves better than the Jazz that same year? And some other things like that. But thank you very much for tuning into Locked On Jazz. Have a nice All-Star break. I will be back with you probably maybe Monday, unlikely, probably Thursday before the Jazz play the Charlotte Hornets. We get going again. Have a great day. Thanks so much for tuning in. We now send you to the first ever 24/7 national sports stream on YouTube.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily
thing. I now send you to the first ever. It's funny, I go to break with a mistake. Locked On Sports Today, also available on Amazon Fire TV. Have a great one. Thank you.